It is October 16th, 2020. I'm just continuing on in my reading narration of my Pedigree of the Phoenix website. This is the second of a series of videos. Just completed the first, so we'll just continue on. I'll just slightly repeat what I said before continuing. As I have stated, a very similar symbol known as the Farohar, aka Faravahar, I think it's also known as the Fravashi, I'll throw that in there, was used by various ancient Mesopotamian cultures to represent their supreme sky gods. As Theophilus Pinchas wrote in his The Religion of Babylonia and Assyria in 1906, in consequence of its appearance, the image of the god has been likened to the sun in eclipse, the far-stretching wings being thought to resemble the long streamers visible at the moment of totality, and it must be admitted as probable that this may have given the idea of the symbol shown on the sculptures. Ashur, the tutelary god of the Assyrian Empire, was one of the Mesopotamian gods who was commonly represented by the Farohar, aka Faravahar, symbol, and we read in another source the following. As for the god Ashur himself, he too more often appears as a symbol rather than in human form. His figure acquires wings like those of Egyptian Horus, and the disc has a bird's tail. Regrettably, I cannot remember the original source of this quote, but it is quite accurate. So, unfortunately, I can't remember where it came across that, but we can consider it. It doesn't really matter. It's almost irrelevant, as there's other quotes that say pretty much the same thing. A caption to a photograph of a clay imprint of an Assyrian cylinder seal states, "Seal design marking the transition from Middle to Late Assyrian styles, circa 900 BC. Kings and supporting genii face a sacred tree of life, with the bird-like symbol of the god Ashur above. This symbol sometimes took the form of a shaped cross, as we read in The Cross in Tradition, History and Art by Reverend William Wood Seymour. The winged globe is common to Egypt, Persia, and other Eastern nations, but the Farohar, as it is called, is most fully developed in Assyria. In Nineveh, we find within the circle the figure of a deity armed with a bow, the wings and figure forming a Tau cross, so a T-shaped cross. The Mesopotamian winged sun symbols that are shaped like Tau crosses bear a striking resemblance to an engraving of a total solar eclipse which occurred over the American Rocky Mountains in the late 19th century. The rays of the sun's corona, as they are depicted in this astronomical illustration, which was published in Flammarion's Astronomie Populaire, eerily reflect the Tau-shaped winged sun disk symbols which are engraved onto ancient Mesopotamian seals and stelae, such as that represented on a stele commemorating Nabonidus, the last king of Babylon. Indeed, their similarity fits to a T, if you will pardon my use of this pun. Yeah, I do like the occasional pun. This celestial Tau cross also bears a strong resemblance to a prodigious cosmic Ankh symbol etched into the heavens. For those people who may not be familiar with the Ankh, it is the Egyptian cross of life symbol, which is essentially a T-shaped cross topped by a loop. So we can see how this image here is similar to an Ankh. It's not identical, but there are some strong similarities here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to blow that image up. So let's keep going here. Come on, yeah. The ancient Egyptian Bennu bird or phoenix, their solar falcon god Horus, and their winged sun disk symbol are completely synonymous. The hieroglyphic inscriptions carved into the masonry of the temple dedicated to Horus at Edfu inform all those who can read them that Horus of Behut flew up into the horizon in the form of a great winged sun disk, for which reason he is called Great God, Lord of Heaven, to this day. And when he saw the enemies in the heights of heaven, he set out to chase them in the form of a great sun a great winged sun disk. When one considers that the total solar eclipse is the natural cosmic symbol par excellence of the victory of the principle of light and good over that of darkness and evil in many cultures, and that the only time that the sun disk may appear to be winged is during a total solar eclipse, it is not surprising in the least that this unique celestial phenomena inspired the parable of the celestial conflict between the solar falcon god Horus and the sun-eating eclipse serpent Set. Okay, that's a bit of an error there. Set is not a serpent per se. Apop is a serpent, and there are stories of Horus and Apop battling. Set was more of a, well, I won't go into it, but there's a bit of an error there. I'm not saying everything I say is like completely 100% correct. This was written quite some time ago. I wasn't an expert in the ancient Egyptian religion when I wrote it. Anyhow, I may not be wrong, because there may indeed be, I think the battle of Horus and Set is almost certainly an eclipse myth as well, but Set was not represented as a serpent, let's put it that way. So it's wrong to say Set was a serpent. As we will see, the link between the sun-eating eclipse serpent and the solar bird is well established not only in ancient Egyptian religious iconography, but also in the iconography and religious beliefs of the Mayans, Aztecs, Incas, and other pre-Columbian American civilizations. One variant of the Egyptian winged sun disk symbol depicted either a falcon or a vulture grasping a globe in each extended talon. On occasion, both versions of this symbol were displayed together, as on a pectoral that was found in the tomb of Ip-Shemru Abbey at Byblos. Another example is found among the treasures of the pharaoh Tutankhamun. I will say that the symbol we're talking about here, that's grasped in the talons of sometimes Horus, sometimes a vulture, it's called the Shen symbol, and it's generally represented as a kind of a loop which is tied at the bottom, sort of like it's like let's say a stick or something that was looped around, and then it's tied, wrapped with ribbon at the bottom to hold it all together. But I have seen versions of the Shen symbol where it looks a lot like a sun-moon conjunction symbol. So I do believe that the Shen symbol itself may actually represent the cycles of the sun and the moon. It's basically a symbol for time and eternity, and based on the fact that just recently I've seen Shen symbols which look a lot like sun-moon conjunction symbols, or contain sun-moon conjunction symbols within the loop, I really do believe that the Shen symbol, it's clearly about time, it's clearly about cycles of time. I would take it one step further and say it's more specifically about the solar and lunar cycles, and solar eclipses come into it. You can see a total solar eclipse as the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. So I think the Shen symbol more or less alludes to that. Let's get back to reading here. So, yet another Egyptian sun disk symbol substituted white ostrich plumes, which more closely resemble the white diaphanous streamers of the sun's corona, for vulture wings. This version of the winged disk symbol was worn as the Atef crown by the gods and the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. The red sun disk of the Atef crown was almost invariably cradled between the horns of a cow. These horns represented the crescent moon and thus indicated a conjunction of the sun and moon in a solar eclipse. The fact that the Atef crown clearly incorporated elements alluding to the total solar eclipse leads me to propose that the tall conical white crown of Upper Egypt was in all probability inspired by the wing-like streamers of the sun's corona. So we're talking about the white conical crown worn typically by Osiris. It's very similar. We can see here actually. So this is the white crown worn by Osiris. Here we see a red solar disk. And here we see a photo of an eclipse oriented in such a way that we can see the close similarity here between the white crown of Upper Egypt worn by Osiris, but also other Egyptian gods, including the Bennu bird, by the way, including Horus, I do believe, and these, sometimes they call these helmet streamers actually, but they're basically the wing-like streamers of the sun. These are oriented at a 90-degree angle from how they normally are. So let's see. Yes, so various professional astronomers have described the conical coronal streamers as resembling the tall conical metal helmets that were once worn by medieval soldiers. There was even a period during the 1960s and 1970s when astronomers regularly referred to these peaked structures in the sun's corona as helmet streamers, and this term is still sometimes used by astronomers. The fact that the white crown worn by Horus and Osiris was definitely a solar symbol, as after all most every crown is, should be clearly confirmed by the fact that on occasion a red sun disk was depicted on its brow. A very straightforward visual comparison of the white crown of ancient Egypt with the wing-like coronal streamers that were so beautifully captured on photographic film by the French astronomer Serge Couchemy in his superb photo of the 1991 total solar eclipse should assure most people that my hypothesis regarding the white crown is essentially valid. A further comparison with earlier photographs of the so-called helmet streamers would be redundant. Let's come down here and let's also check the time, see how we're doing. Yeah, we got 8 minutes left. A Mesopotamian stela from Tel Amr, preserved in the Aleppo Museum, depicts a god Teshup and dates to approximately 1000 BCE. It displays a rare but highly revealing variant of the winged disc symbol hovering over this Mesopotamian god's head. In this particular case, the wings do not spread out from either side of the disc or ring, but rather they support an upturned lunar crescent, which in turn cradles a disc. There is a slight possibility that this crescent and disc symbol represents only the moon in both its crescent and full phases, but I think it is more reasonable to consider that it is far more likely to represent the conjunction of both the sun and the moon during a solar eclipse, particularly when one finds similar crescent and disk symbols on Mesopotamian stelae where the disk cradled by the moon is clearly identifiable as the sun. This stela should help to confirm that the winged disk symbol is in fact an ancient depiction of the total eclipse of the sun that, while it may well have been used to represent the sun god in general, it was clearly inspired by the total solar eclipse with its unique and spectacular visual phenomena. I will add that since writing this, I've come across other winged sun symbols where it's not just a winged sun, it's actually a winged sun-moon conjunction symbol. In fact, I was talking about a Hittite version just the other day. The Hittite version that I'm talking about, and there's more than just one, there's actually a fair number, but there's one in particular where it's an upturned lunar crescent cradling a rosette. This is a flower-like symbol. People often think it's just a flower, but in fact it's a solar symbol, and it essentially is just a simplified, stylized, flower-like symbol inspired by the fact that the totally eclipsed sun, when the rays and streamers are quite evenly distributed around it, looks a lot like a flower. It's being described as a flower quite a number of times, or compared to a flower by professional astronomers observing total solar eclipses. So that's almost a no-brainer that the rosette symbol is essentially a stylized depiction of a total solar eclipse. Other Mesopotamian stelae clearly depict the winged sun symbol flanked on either side by the crescent moon and the sun disk. Why would the ancient peoples want to depict the sun twice, once as a winged sun symbol and then again as a round rayed sun disk? The indisputable fact that the winged sun symbol is quite often depicted between the sun disk and the moon disk or lunar crescent on an ancient stelae would tend to confirm that it was used by the ancient Mesopotamians to represent the conjunction of both the sun and the moon in the total solar eclipse. A stele from Kala, Iraq, the site of ancient Nimrod, depicts the Assyrian ruler Assur-Nasiripal II holding a long, thin rod which extends from the floor to the height of his chin. Over this rod hovers a typical Mesopotamian wing with ring symbol, which contains a Maltese cross formed by 4 broad triangular wedges radiating outwards from a smaller central circle to the inner circumference of the ring. A thin, slightly wavy ray bisects the space between each of these 4 wedges. This so-called Maltese cross also appears on a medallion which hangs from a cord around the ruler's neck, and it is clearly a symbol of royal authority, if not divinity. The cross is an ancient symbol associated with the sun, whose origins are lost in the mist of time. More and more evidence seems to indicate that the solar cross symbol was originally inspired by cross-like form in the sun's corona that may be seen during some total solar eclipses. In fact, most total solar eclipses do have this cross-like pattern in the corona. Let's see where we are time-wise. 4 minutes, still have time. A common form of the sun's corona, usually seen when the sunspot cycle is near its maximum phase of activity, is that of a 4-rayed star, with the polar and equatorial streamers having similar shapes and sizes. The polar rays in particular fan out in a manner that clearly reflects the wedge-shaped arms of a Maltese cross. The cross may also have been used to symbolize the total eclipse of the sun, for the simple reason that a solar eclipse only occurs when the path of the moon literally crosses over that of the sun in the skies above. So it could be a dual-purpose symbol. The wavy pattern of the wings and the tail of this particular example of the Mesopotamian ring with wings symbol is virtually identical to an astronomical drawing of the total solar eclipse of 1900, which was executed with white chalk on black paper by Andrew C.D. Crommelin, FRAS, Fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society, as the Earth's only moon completely occulted the sun in the skies over Algiers. This scientific illustration is reproduced as figure 11 in Edward Maunder's book, The Total Eclipse of 1900, which provides a complete report on this eclipse. So here we see the images. So we can see how this Assyrian religious symbol is very, very similar to this scientific astronomical drawing of a total solar eclipse. And then we see this symbol in the context that I was talking about at the top of this rod. And so here we have a lunar disk, here we have the winged sun symbol. This, I believe, is sometimes identified as Venus, but I think it could also be the sun. That's open to some debate, I'd say. So moon, winged sun symbol, also the sun, and either Venus or the sun, but I think it's probable it's the sun. So you have moon, winged sun symbol, sun. So when the moon and the sun come together, you get this. Come down here. Oh, we're just about done for part 1. Looks like we'll be able to finish it. The Chaldean people of Mesopotamia, whose culture spanned from about 1000 BC to 540 BCE, and the ancient Egyptian priests are believed to have been able to predict both solar and lunar eclipses with considerable accuracy. The ancient Greek historian Diodorus Siculus stated of the Theban priests, "They seem to have studied with care the eclipses of the sun and moon and make predictions concerning them, infallibly foretelling every particular." We know that from their observations of solar eclipses, the Chaldeans were amongst the earliest cultures to discover the fact that eclipses of the sun recur in cycles, with the Earth, its moon, and the sun returning to almost identical relative positions every 18 years and 11 days. And that's the end of that part 1. There's a part 2, which is about the same length. But we're going to wrap this up here, and because we're coming to the end of our time limit in terms of video recording. Got a minute left. But that's it. I just wanted to get this down in video. Should have done it years ago, really. And we'll continue on as soon as we can.